Alright everyone, the other day I was kicked off of community notes on Twitter. I can still rate other people's notes, but I can't actually make ratings on there anymore. And that's because of their thing, if I think it's 3 out of 5 of your recent notes are found unhelpful, then you get booted from the site. There are multiple problems, as I've discussed before, with community notes. But Elon Musk himself was kind enough to actually reply to the thread that I made on this topic, so maybe I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. To be clear, it is a little bit unique among mainline tech sites when the person who's running the site and happens to be the richest person in the world is actually willing to address people's concerns. So I guess all's fair on that one. That's one up for him, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt here. And I don't think that Twitter uniquely targeted me. As I pointed out in my original tweet on the topic, and I'm going to use the term Twitter because nobody really calls it X for the most part except the legacy media and Elon himself. As I pointed out, the problem with community notes isn't really like a moderation system in the classic sense. It really has to do with the misuse of that service by people using off-site locations in order to mob community notes. And this is self-evident. Here, I'm just going to read what I said and then his response, and then I'll address both, really, the problem. I said Twitter's community notes is fundamentally useless. It incentivizes misuse and mobbing. Those of us who actually play by the rules and don't use off-site presence to dogpile positive or negative feedback are basically dead in the water. This is objectively the case, by the way. Elon Musk, you gotta get this fixed or you end up with an echo chamber of people willing to break your own site rules. Now he weighed in, which is again hilarious, and I was asleep at the time or would have responded sooner. He said, "You're wrong. The batting average of community notes is so good that we actually notice when it is wrong, and I have yet to see an inaccurate note survive for very long, even once. Please cite the ones you think are wrong in this reply thread and we will investigate." You see, here's the problem. The problem is that I can't actually access the notes that I've made, which over time fluctuate between being rated helpful or unhelpful, because they're not there anymore, because I was kicked off of community notes. I'm talking about specifically the notes that I myself have made. The first note that I made that was actually given a rating at all was rated helpful, for example. This was months ago. It was on one of Marianne Williamson's posts, actually. She had said something that was objectively untrue. I had fact-checked that with a link. I had pointed out that what she was saying was inaccurate. I can't remember what it was because it's not there in the docket anymore because there's no docket to look at, unfortunately. I would think at least I should be able to see the notes that I made and therefore I can tell which ones have been rated unhelpful for the purposes of knowing what topics I shouldn't bother to make community notes on in the future because they're just going to get dogpiled. Anyway, the note was there for several months. Then all of a sudden it was no longer rated as helpful. Again, if you're looking for consensus, this sort of malleability of what reality is or is not, number one, doesn't make a lot of sense. Once a note has been rated helpful or unhelpful, unless there's an escalated complaint that's going directly to Twitter's moderation or saying, hey, this note is clearly wrong, I can prove it, wouldn't you say the consensus number one has already been achieved? Number two, if a user gets removed from the ability to write community notes so they can only rate them then, it's interesting that immediately all of their notes appear to disappear entirely, number one. Although that may not be the case, maybe they're just not listed. Again, for reference purposes, that person then has no way to know even which community note they made, which was an infraction supposedly of the community note standards. And number two, the ratings go away as well. I can no longer see that. I had over 100, level 100 on there, so obviously as far as my participation with community notes in the sense of interacting with notes that other people have made, that was never a problem. I'm clearly not trying to game the system. I'm not organizing off-site and breaking the rules of Twitter at large by doing so, by the way, and that really becomes the problem. If a person has created a network of individuals using accounts that are registered, so you're going to have to actually have verified accounts and pay to use them, and they create a network thereof, they can easily overwhelm anyone else on the site that would happen to try to countermand their community noting. When I go through, or when I used to go through, since I'm not on community notes anymore, what I would see is an endless wall of abuse of the system. In some cases, fact-checking that is not really factual, but I can't give you those examples insofar as my own notes go because they're not there anymore. And that really becomes the problem. It's not, maybe I was unfair in saying community notes is fundamentally useless. It can be useful. The problem is that if you have a hot button issue, and those are the ones that tend to get the notes, you have incentivized people to go in with their bias and attempt to influence whether a potential note is unhelpful, helpful, or simply never sees the light of day because it's still under debate. There's not enough ratings on it, or the rating's like 50-50 or something, and it's not exactly 100% clear what the threshold is. Maybe it depends on some relevance to its engagement or something. So if the note is being engaged with a lot, maybe it's quicker that process goes through, or maybe it's slower. I'm not 100% sure. So to Elon, I would say this. I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt. I don't think that your site is deliberately trying to screw me chocolate style. What I'm saying is that people are organizing off-site to dogpile ratings. You've got individuals like myself who really are trying their best to be unbiased, actually going out of our way to try to fact-check and do it properly, like the way that Snopes or PolitiFact doesn't do it. And then we're getting punished for not breaking your site rules. I have no doubt that this wouldn't be happening if I linked the tweets out on a third-party site that was not identifiably from me. So I'm competing with other notes that are on there and just saying, hey, upvote this one, and putting it on a Telegram channel or a Discord server or something like that. I don't think there would have been a problem, because all of a sudden, at the very least, even if the notes don't appear, they're not going to have enough negative ratings on them to underwhelm the number of people that I could possibly bring to the table to actually help me in such an endeavor. We would be talking about hundreds or thousands of people. Well, that would be a significant number, considering the number of people using community notes. And this is happening. I've seen it happen, actually. You can find people that are doing this. Do you think that it's impossible that a government, which has limitless taxpayer money to create a botnet of registered accounts, couldn't possibly do the same thing? Again, it's a useful feature for what it is, but mainly not for hot-button political takes. In some cases, because of the structure. The other part is the reliability of links. That's probably the other biggest problem. You'll have two people noting the same post. The post says, this is the inflation rate. And one will say, yes, indeed it is. It has a link that shows that that's the inflation rate. Another person says, no, that's actually not accurate at all. The real inflation rate is this, and they have a different site that they're using with a different metric. Maybe it's using CPI instead of general. Maybe it's using a different figure. Maybe it's using, some sort of analysis from some economic school that's outside of the mainstream. But again, you have a war of whose node is more accurate based on the source, but those sources are all third party. That becomes a problem as well. I appreciate the feedback, but I maintain my basic premise, which is, yes, the community note system desperately needs to be reworked, because people who are attempting to actually use it for the purpose that you self-statedly have in mind are getting booted off of the service, while people who are making malicious notes in some cases are not. When I looked in community notes, like the suggested notes in general, I saw walls and walls of abuse of the system, clogging it up. That should be punished more. The obviously malicious notes are the ones you should be going for first, kicking those people out in order to clean everything for those of us that are actually trying to do something positive for the site. Otherwise, community notes will inevitably eventually fail. I mean, it's already combated by the legacy media, which has an axe to grind with your website in the first place. It would kind of make sense to, I think, reformat the way in which it's done. Again, it could be very useful, but you got to retool it. It's not perfected. It's definitely still a work in progress. That's about all. Peace out.